The Human Animal Connection presents the Human Animal Connection podcast with your host, Jeannie Joseph.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Human Animal Connection podcast. We have a really fun show for you today because we're going to be speaking with the Hermitage No-Kill Cat Shelter and Sanctuary in Tucson, Arizona. And I'm just so impressed with the work that they're doing there and the way that they do things and the culture of cats. It just seems really, to me, it seems innovative. I know you guys have been at it for a long time, but it just seems wonderful the way you recognize that cats are social animals. I think a lot of us have been thinking of cats as being kind of solo players and incredibly independent. But the truth is that they have a very interesting, complex, and totally beautiful social structure. That doesn't mean that everybody gets along, but it does mean that there are a lot of advantages to having cats in a shelter environment, being able to connect with each other, find their own friends, decide who they like, who they don't like, decide who their buddies are. So maybe we'll begin with Allison. Let me just introduce Allison. She joined the Hermitage staff in May 2020, and she's been a member of the Hermitage family since she began volunteering in 2015. Yay, volunteers. She's a recent University of Arizona master's graduate, and her love of animals combined with her fierce drive for justice and advocacy makes her a strong addition to the Hermitage team. So maybe, Allison, would you like to give us like a little overview of what the Hermitage is all about and what makes it unique?
The Hermitage is a shelter, but we are also an accredited sanctuary. So this means that we follow a no-kill philosophy, and kitties that come to us, we try to get them adopted, but they are safe and welcome to stay with us for as long as they need. For some, that may be their whole lifespan. So our shelter is cage-free. And that way it's more like a home, a house for them that they can move around freely and they're not stuck in a cage for years. They feel comfortable, and that helps them not only live a good life while they're with us, but also be more comfortable and more adoptable because people want to see them in a home environment.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. So they seem more normal rather than being in a stressed out. I know that there are some shelters that do their best, but sometimes in some shelters, they're in solitary cages, and it just doesn't allow them to be at their best, and therefore make adoption more challenging. Great. Okay, so let's just talk about that environment and what you see about how it works. So I don't know what that Amber or Karina, who would like to talk about why this social environment is really ideal. Is that Amber? Would you like to share about that? Let me introduce Amber. So Amber, hi. She joined the Heritage staff in 2017 and became shelter manager in 2020. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And Amber brings her past nonprofit experience in education and medical work to her work in the animal welfare sector. And as the staff leader of the Hermitage team, Amber makes an impact in the lives of cats and humans every day. So yeah, Amber, why don't you take us away? Explain why this environment is really important for them.
Sure. And Allison really hit a lot on it about the cats being more comfortable in their space. We have a lot of cats that come in, and they, in other cases, they would shelter fail in a kennel, but because we have this open space that they can find a little hidey-hole if they want to, a little shy area, they tend to thrive a lot more and do a lot better. Even we consider ourselves more than a shelter because they have that free roaming ability. And we do have cats that are bonded, that find friendship in another cat and, only want to hang out with that cat. And if they were to be separated, then, one of them or both of them could get sick due to stress. Yes.
And I think I'm sure that our listeners understand that animals experience stress, and that stress can be detrimental to them physically, mentally, emotionally, and, on all the levels that it is for us as human animals. So it's really important to find an environment where they are thriving rather than being stressed. So kudos to you guys. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about cat behavior and what they need in an enriched environment. Is that, Karina, something you'd like to share with us? Let me introduce Karina. Karina has been an animal lover and crazy cat lady all her life. And as the volunteer coordinator and social media specialist, Karina demonstrates her passion and advocacy for the Hermitage's mission on a daily basis. So tell us a little bit about what you know about cat behavior and how it pertains to how they can thrive at the Hermitage.
Sure. So our cats definitely thrive being in a free roaming environment. And as Amber touched, not being stuck in a cage the whole entire time. They have their own personality, so they come out of their shells on their own time. They don't have to necessarily, they're not stuck in a cage where they feel like they're just trapped, if you will. They're actually in a free roaming and they're actually enjoying themselves. And cat enrichment, we have wonderful socializers, our volunteers. We have our socializers, and they help a lot when it comes to helping the kitty come out of their shell, getting them used to the shelter environment, getting them really acclimated to shelter life, if you will. And it helps a lot because it depends on the type of kitty, because we get kitties from everywhere. We get kitties from other shelters, strays from, off the streets. And then of course we get kitties that are relinquished from owners. And some of them have had homes since, the same home since they were a kitten, and they'll be 10, 11 years old. And a lot of times, it's a shock for them to come to a shelter. And so it helps that this is more, we try and make it as much as like a home environment as possible. And our socializers really help them acclimate and really help them feel more comfortable so they don't shelter fail. And so they are okay and they do become adoptable.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Let's talk a little bit about territoriality in cats. Because again, there's this myth that cats don't get along, or you can only have one cat, or Allison or anybody who would like to sort of share about how cats relate to territory and how you both contain that by not having it unlimited. You have some boundaries, but you also have freedom of choice that they can choose whether to interact or hide away. Or tell us more about that.
So cats are pretty territorial. But again, people tend to think cats have one personality, which is just aloof, but that's very untrue. Cats, just like dogs or people, are all different and have different personalities, different wants and needs. Our shelter, because it is cage-free, we do a temperament test when we take in cats, which is a downside because we can't take in feral cats or more aggressive kitties. But on the opposite end of the spectrum, this allows them to be cage-free. And then we know that even if there are little skirmishes once in a while, they all tend to kind of find their own space within the shelter. The more confident ones might move around more, but the kitties tend to be like, all right, this is my corner. This is like where I'm going to go when I need to feel safe or when I want to get away. And then that's kind of their space until they find their adopter. Yeah.
Well, I'm a real big believer in animals having both choice and a sense of safety as being a way to alleviate stress in a shelter or sanctuary environment. So I think that that's wonderful that you do that. What is a temperament test? How do you test? What are you looking for? How do you evaluate?
So a temperament test is basically our medical department does a certain test to see how the kitty reacts to different things, different stressors and whatnot, and see if the cat is truly aggressive, i.e. feral, versus just very, very scared. Because there's a difference. A lot of people think very, very, very scared kitties are feral cats, and they're really not. And so our temperament test helps us alleviate where these kitties fall.
Okay. And you can tell that on a first meeting? Is that?
Yeah, our medical department is really, really good when it comes to doing their temperament tests for our kitties.
Well, let's talk. We'll just hear from each of you. Maybe Allison will go first. I just want to ask you, what is it about cats? All animals are wonderful. They're all terrific. But what is it about cats that's just like, we so want them in our lives? And tell me, just subjectively speaking, like Allison, why do you think that cats are so magical?
Well, for me personally, I actually grew up with dogs. So I didn't really experience cats until I was already an adult when I got my first kittens. And I feel like the fun part about them is not only realizing that they do have so many different personalities and they're just so varied, but also They are a little bit harder to please than dogs most of the time. There's kind of like a challenge element and a playing hard to get part to them that I like. I like, you know, when my cats come and give me love, it just feels extra special because they don't always want it, or they don't always feel they need me. So
you have to be worthy of their love.
Yeah, exactly.
You have to earn their love every moment. And Amber, what about for you? What is it about cats?
I think Sister Seraphim, we have a quote from Sister Seraphim where she says that it's an honor to be able to be loved by a cat, because they really, they choose to. They don't do it out of need because they can take care of themselves.
Yeah.
And, you know, also the healing and soothingness of their purr.
Yeah, their purr. Isn't that the most amazing thing? Amazing. Yeah. Karina, what about for you?
I've had cats my whole life, and I've noticed when I've had kitties, what I do love about each of my kitties is they have their own distinct personalities, and of course I've noticed they take on some of my personality. Anyway, I have 2 kitties currently, and I actually just recently adopted my first Hermitage kitty, and she chose me. She truly chose me. She was one of the scared. She was more of a fearful kitty. She would hide in a cubby. She never came out for anybody. And she definitely chose me. She got comfortable with me. She would follow me around the shelter, and she's taken on a little part of my personality, which is very interesting, along with my boy cat. So that's one thing I love about kitties is they have their own personalities, but they definitely like mimic their owners in a sense to a certain extent. And yes, it's very honoring to have the love of a kitty. When a kitty falls in love with you, that's definitely an amazing feeling.
Yeah, it is definitely. I don't have a cat now, but when I was in Hawaii and I was seeing clients in my house doing therapy, I had a therapy cat, and this cat would know exactly who needed attention, when they needed attention, for as long as they needed attention. And we would do some kind of deeper healing work, and the cat would come for the healing work, leave when it was done. You know, they knew exactly when to come in and engage. And if somebody has something that was hurting physically, he would often sit on that spot or lay on that spot. So it's just amazing their intuition when it comes to humans, especially considering how different we are and how inept we are in some ways. That's right. Exactly right. They're not going to let us forget that. It's a good thing they don't. So, which brings us to the whole question of cat communication, animal communication in general. As you know, our belief at the Human Animal Connection is that all animals communicate with each other. They can communicate across species, and they can communicate with us if we learn, if we develop the ability to understand the ways in which they communicate, that their methods of communicating are going to be different from ours. And that so it requires, you know, like learning a new language, we have to make a cat communication adjustment in the way that we engage with them. So I'd like each of you to just weigh in on the whole question of cat communication. And I know that there's a spectrum of belief on that. I mean, we respect everyone's beliefs, people who think that it's just, you know, about observing body language, or, you know, maybe on the most basic level, and other people who feel you can have conversations with your cats, so you can have in-depth communication. So maybe each of you, Allison, we'll start with you, could just weigh in on where you are personally, not the cat hermitage position per se, but just personally in your own experience. What do you think about communicating with cats, Allison?
I mean, I think it's definitely possible to have a deeper communication, especially with a cat that you get to know well. Like new cats at the shelter, it might take me longer to understand even their body language, because their body language can vary. But my cats at home, or the cats that have been at the shelter for longer that I know better, I can read them easier. We have more of a rapport. Just like with people, you kind of like, you know what sets them off and what to say to calm them down. But we actually had a medium come in and communicate with some of our cats. And I mean, I'm not sure that I completely believe in that, but it was great to see her interact with the kitties and tell what she felt were their stories and what they wanted. And I mean, a lot of what they wanted was what all cats want, just a loving home and someone to take care of them.
Yeah, that's exciting. So I just want to ask you, Allison, when you say read that, tell me more about what you mean by read that. You're reading your personal cat's behavior. What are you reading? How are you reading?
Their body language. So like they do little tail movements that mean different things. If their ears go back, obviously hissing or growling are signals of displeasure, purring. But we get some cats in sometimes that don't have those tells, and you kind of just have to watch them. We have a little kitty from Puerto Rico, and his name is Gallivant, and he does not have. He when he first came in, he just does not know how to be a cat very well. We're not really sure why, but he does not have any signal of when he's going to bite you. He comes right up to you. He acts very affectionate. And then all of a sudden he switches and will bite you pretty hard. So it's just a matter of getting to know him personally and kind of understanding like, all right, I know I got about 2 minutes. And when he starts getting a little more excited, I probably need to let him sit for a few by himself,
Yeah. Well, that's great. That's great. Because, in some other situations, a cat like that would be in immediate euthanasia in some shelters, just for doing that. And instead of just having that sort of automatic response to be able to recognize that, okay, he's not communicating the way my cat does, but he is, he does have a rhythm. He does have a pattern, maybe it's 2 minutes or maybe it's increased energy. That is an indication that he is communicating in his way. It's just not the way that I'm used to, but that there is a communication. Yeah. And Amber, what about you? Where are you on the communication with cats question? Where are you on the spectrum?
Well, my cats are very, very vocal. So if they're out of food, if they're out of dry food, normally they free feed. My cats will scream at the top of their lungs until they get fed. Or if they want in or out of a door, they will scream at the top of their lungs until I let them in or out of their door. I guess with my cats, they're just vocal. But there's other cats in the shelter that that it's more of like a telepathic communication, and we have Karina will be able to hit on this a little bit more, but we have socializers who come in and they are great with communicating with the cats. It does involve their tells, their signs that they're showing you, and also their interaction with the actual socializers.
Yes. And do these people feel that they can have conversations back and forth, ask questions, hear answers? Is that, yeah?
Definitely.
Wonderful.
Yep.
And Karina, what can you share with us on where are you on the spectrum and what are your beliefs and thoughts?
Oh, I totally believe in talking to kitties. My 2 cats at home, they have different ways of telling me. Like my cat Leo, when he's out of food, he comes into wee hours of the morning. He actually did this morning, which is kind of funny. He was out of his dry food, so he comes into my bed and he starts to be very affectionate and very purring in my ear and like, Mom, wake up, I'm hungry. My kitty, she passed away in 2018, but Adrian, she was more of a, I'm going to wake you up right now by scratching the TV in my room, and that's how she would wake me up for food. Yeah, I have very interesting kitties. And then here at the Hermitage, when I do orientations, I always tell our prospective volunteers the tells of kitties, like what to watch, like what signs to watch for. For instance, when a cat either is about to get bitey, overstimulated, the different tells to look for. For instance, if a cat is giving you negative feedback, such as growling, hissing, backing away, their ears are flattening, their tail is starting to like move back and forth, because cats don't wag their tails like doggies. That's a very true sign of overstimulation, kind of like the Gallivant gets overstimulated. And that's when they want to play, and they kind of play a little too rough, and they'll like start to, go all over your arm or your hand and whatnot. And you got to watch for that because you don't want to get bit or scratched. And so that's what we tell our new volunteers. And our current socializers are very, very good about talking to our kitties. They know their tells even better than some of our staff because they know our kitties so very well. And we have, it's pretty awesome. We have a communication board with our medical department, with our socializers, because, a lot of times our staff in our medical department, isn't always out on the floor, on the shelter floor, but our socializers are. So if they notice a kitty's not looking too good, doesn't, they think the kitty may have a, coming down with a cold, for instance, or something like that, they can write it on our board. So they definitely, know what to look for, know the different mannerisms of the cats, and the cats definitely communicate with them very, very much.
That's excellent. Yeah. And do you feel that tone of voice, just, whether or not you're a believer that cats can understand you, do you find that talking to cats just out loud is beneficial to them, reassuring to them? What have you guys noticed?
Real like soft, I call it soft voice and soft hands, because you don't want to look like you're approaching them too aggressively, because then that's when you're going to get the negative feedback. So talking to them in a certain tone definitely works. And you can see it on my live videos every single day because I talk to them every single day.
Yes, good. Well, I'll just tell one story. This isn't my story, but another cat communicator, this is in one of Margaret Williams' books, is she had 2 cats, and she was very determined to do therapy cat work, where she would take her cats to the nursing home. And the patients were very happy to see these cats, and they were doing really well. But after a while, she discovered that it was harder to get her cats into their carry cases to go to this thing. It was getting harder and harder. And one she couldn't get at all. He was an indoor, outdoor, and he would just disappear when it was time to go. And she realized, okay, he doesn't want to go, but she still was getting the one in reluctantly. And it was Halloween. She was all dressed up in her cat outfit. Everybody was looking forward to seeing her. And she was just learning her cat communication at this point. And she got there, and this cat said to her, "If you take me to see one more wrinkly old lady, I'm going to scratch her to bits." And she realized that this cat had had enough of this therapy work. They enjoyed it at first, but they just hit a point where that was enough for them. And so I think that's such a fun story, whether you believe that or not. It's interesting that cats, we believe that animals have opinions. And it doesn't always mean that they're going to get what they want, just because they're scratching your TV if it's 4 a.m, maybe it isn't time to eat, but we still, as the human, we still have a parental role. But the fact is, just recognizing that they have thoughts and opinions, I think helps us deal with them in a more loving and empathic way. And I think that that's one of the roles of cats in our lives, is to teach us about being more empathetic, being more alert to what another creature wants and desires, whether or not you plan to give it to them. Maybe they're not going to get catnip every day, but it's just interesting to be able to recognize that they have those desires. That's a good place to start in becoming a better human, I think. So let's talk a little bit. I'm really interested in the buddy cats, because that's such an unusual situation in a sanctuary or shelter environment for cats to be able to find their own buddies and to be able to spend time with their buddy, and maybe even to be adopted with their buddy. So who would like to talk a little bit about how you notice a buddyship happening? And also another question is, do they ever, how humans unbuddy, we have fights with our friends, do the cats buddy up and then something happens and they unbuddy? Tell us about buddy cats. Yeah, Allison, did you want to share?
Yeah, sure. So there's kind of a difference. So there's cats that are buddies, and then there's cats that are bonded pairs. So the buddy cats are kind of they might hang out together, but bonded pairs absolutely need each other to feel safe and secure. And in fact, if they were to be separated, it would be detrimental to one or both of their health. So buddies, so we have a buddy pair that, they hang out, but we don't say that they need to be adopted together. We might encourage an adopter to take both of them, but it doesn't have to happen. Because we don't want to hold them back if an adopter falls in love with one and can only take one. But bonded pairs, so for example, we have a senior pair of kitties, Twizzler and Onyx, and they actually met at our shelter. They came in a year apart, and they weren't bonded for their first several years at the Hermitage. They actually were adopted separately a couple of times and brought back due to just not adjusting well to their new home life. And eventually, a few years ago, they started hanging out more, and it's our medical team that determines if it's a bonded pair. Staff and volunteers, socializers are really important for this, might notice that a pair is getting closer and might alert the medical team, but then the medical team decides if they're just friends or actually, bonded. Twizzler and Onyx, actually, we just did a cute little wedding for them on YouTube. So they're now really bonded, legally bonded, kind of. Legally.
That's great.
So they will either spend the rest of their lives together at our shelter, or they will go home together if someone adopts.
And do you ever see unfriending on the friend side? How does that happen? Why does it happen? What do you notice about that?
Usually it happens when kitties come in bonded. So say, maybe we get siblings that have lived together their whole life at someone's house, and then they come to us. So they're bonded, but once they get into the shelter environment, they realize that they're more confident than they thought, and they just don't really need each other the way that they once did. So at that point, same kind of thing. We may still encourage an adopter to take them together since they've, lived happily together before, but they don't necessarily need to be adopted together.
Okay, that's very interesting. And what about competitiveness or rivalries, or do you have any animosity? What's the dark side of cats all living communally?
We do get some squabbles once in a while. It's usually like territorial stuff, as we mentioned before. So especially when there are new cats. So if we release a new cat into the general population, it might take them a little bit of time to kind of find their space. So they might run around like hissing at other cats or getting hissed at if they try to go into a cubby that's not theirs, just until they find their place in the shelter. We also get some cats that just need to be only cats. They just really do not get along. They don't want roommates. Some of those cats actually live either in our like medical lobby or our front lobby or in the office. We have Franken. I don't know if he's near Karina right now. He lives in our office, and he's in our office because he just did not get along with other kitties, and he has FeLV as well. So now he just hangs out with us and one other kitty in our office, and he's much happier that way.
Right. Good. Well, let's talk a little bit about FeLV. First, tell us what it is, and then it used to be when I was first volunteering at shelters, it was like almost like a death knell. They would be kept separate, and very high risk of euthanasia and not being adopted. I know you guys are really breaking new ground in how you understand this. So, who would like to talk about the whole issue of how you relate to FeLV, what it is first, and how you treat it differently?
So FeLV is feline leukemia virus, and it's one of the most common chronic illnesses in cats. It is transmitted through bodily functions, but most commonly through saliva. So they can spread it by grooming each other, shared food or water bowls, that kind of thing. It is mainly an immunosuppressant. So basically, kitties with FeLV, it opens them up to all kinds of other diseases and sicknesses. And that's like the really horrible thing about it, is that it just makes them more susceptible to other things. So having FeLV in itself is not a death sentence. And we want to make that very clear. Like, you said when you were first starting out, it was something that kitties were automatically euthanized for. And unfortunately, it still is. And we really want to break that down, because just because your kitty has FeLV does not mean that they're going to die immediately or in the next year. We've had some kitties live for 18 years with FeLV at our shelter. Franken, again, our office cat, he's about 10. He has FeLV, but no other health issues. He'll with good vet care and food and stress-free life, he will most likely live as long as any other cat. We do keep these kitties separate though, but that's more for their own good. It's to reduce the number of illnesses that they come in contact with, since they are susceptible. We also have begun the process of vaccinating all of our non-infected kitties, which protects them. And it's a way that you could have an integrated household if that was right for you. So these cats, the point is, these cats are adoptable, and we want to make sure people understand they can live just as long, healthy, happy lives as any other cat.
Great. Okay. And Karina or Amber, you want to add anything to that conversation?
If you ever get the chance to come to the shelter and visit our FeLV room, they are the most loving cats in the shelter. All they want is affection.
Yeah, that's very nice. Well, we certainly want to help begin to change the shelter culture nationally and internationally in terms of understanding this, and that it shouldn't be the automatic euthanasia list for those cats. Great. How do you handle, like in a group situation of feeding, making sure that everybody's getting fed and the things that don't go haywire? How does that handle?
So they get to free feed on their dry food. We keep it. Our volunteers are always replacing dry food when they need to replace it if it gets too old or whatnot. And then they also get their wet food twice a day. They get wet food. We call it num-nums at 7 a.m. and at 2 p.m. And our volunteers help with the feeding as well. So we really don't have since they get to free feed on their dry food, and there's so many bowls all throughout the shelter, they don't get into, territorial or anything like that. Same with the wet food, we give it in big moats, so they have enough room to feed. And we also have those kitties that are a little more shy or that don't necessarily get along with other cats. They get their own little separate food bowl of their little nummies. We like to spoil our cats, so we like to give them their little num-nums. And so, and doing that helps them not get too territorial with the food.
Good. So the moral of the story is make sure there's abundance, and it lowers the unnecessary aggression or struggle. So
yes,
the secret to happy cat is having everything it needs.
Yep.
Everything he or she needs. Okay, good. So what would you tell other shelters or other people thinking about who work with other shelters? I know it's not easy for shelters to make these kinds of changes, but what would you say in terms of other organizations thinking about how to move more in the direction that you guys do with social cats? What advice would you have for them? Amber, would you like?
I would say that, when you see the cats and how they react to the open shelter life versus being in a kennel, that's all the reason right there to go into a more of a situation like our open shelter. It really does help them become more adaptable. When adopters come in, they see them, like we've talked about, in a home environment, and they could see how they react to different situations. And it for the overall health of the cats, it's just worth it.
And how do you guys do in terms of health issues, like the respiratory things that are going around and stuff? How do you detect it early? How do you prevent it? How do you handle it if it does crop up? Who would like to share about that?
Karina touched a little bit on that earlier with our communication board. And a lot of it is our socializers and our volunteers that are out on the floor constantly around the cats, that can observe the cats, communicating with our medical department and seeing those, hey, somebody's got a goopy eye or somebody looks like they may have the sniffles, and having the follow-up from our medical team. We have preventative care, which is very helpful. And you don't see that quite as much in other shelters where they're stuck in kennels.
Great. Okay. So I'm sure you're a 501c3. I'm sure you could use some help, some financial donations. How can people find you? How can they help you? What would you like to see from people who'd like to support you?
We definitely can always use donations. They help us take care of all the cats, food, litter. We have a full in-house medical suite where we do, minor surgeries, spay, neuters, stuff like that. So any donations that come in go directly back to the kitties. You can donate to us by going to our website, hermitagecatshelter.org, and clicking the donate button. And then there's a bunch of options on how you'd like to donate or, where you want it to go. And we want people to also know that we're more than just a cat shelter. We do a lot of community outreach and giving back to the community. We've been in this community for more than 55 years now, and we really believe in giving back. We have programs that are on hiatus at the moment because of COVID, but we would love to see them come back, such as Snuggles for Seniors and Meows for Military, which are both animal-assisted therapy programs. We also have Food for People's Pets, which is our pet pantry, where low-income people or families can come to get pet food. That way we keep animals from going into the shelter while their humans are struggling. We want to help keep those families together because we believe that the animals are part of the family just as much as the people. We do have dog and cat food. Donations are always helpful. We also have a volunteer application on our website, and of course, adoptions. We have our adoption application on our website as well. It is fairly extensive, and this is because we're picky about who our kitties go to. We want to make sure they go to the best homes possible and are going to get the best care possible.
Great. Well, just to finish up, maybe just ask each one of you, how can you be a better human if you share your life with a cat?
My cats let you know that they thank you for what we do for them. They snuggle, and my cats take turns every morning with each person too. We have one particular cat. I can go in one of my kids' rooms, and 5 minutes later, he'll be in another room. He just takes his turns with every human every morning. It's just their love, unlike a dog, is conditional. And like I said before, it's an honor to receive it.
Being a person who's patient and understanding and empathetic helps us work with the cats. And cats kind of reflect, Karina kind of touched on this with her cats, but they reflect your mood and they reflect your personality in many ways. So by being kind and being empathetic toward them, they tend to show that back to you. So I feel like us being better humans helps them be better cats, and then it just kind of becomes a cycle.
Good question. How can you be a better human to share your life with a kitty? I think kitties make humans better humans. I think animals in general make humans better humans. I'm a big believer in being good stewards for the flora and fauna, for the earth, and for all the species that we share this earth with. And I truly believe that animals definitely make humans better. They show us just how compassionate they are, how loving they are, you will see animals that you think that shouldn't get along, and it's just amazing in the wild, in your house, and like cats and dogs, for instance. A lot of people think cats and dogs don't get along. Cats and dogs can get along. It depends on the cat. It depends on the doggy. So I just think them showing their true selves makes us better humans.
Well, I want to thank all three of you, Amber Nix, Karina Levine, Allison Israel, from the Hermitage No-Kill Cat Shelter and Sanctuary. You guys are doing wonderful work, you and all your team and all your volunteers, and all the care and all the love that you spread every day, making the world just a little bit better place because of the cats that you take care of. So thank you so much, and we look forward to talking with you again soon.